I'm going through changes. Welcome to the 90th most popular podcast in the universe. I've never taken this long to get an episode out before. This conversation is a really great one. I liked it a lot with Robbie, Hansen from August. It's now November 5th. There's been a few changes. Coming to you from a new studio on Sunset Boulevard and Santa Monica, right at Sunset Junction. Sorry for the delay, folks. We passed up the 4-year anniversary of the show in September, and it's been a great journey. Thanks to everyone who's listened and supports the show. We hit the charts, and 4 years, it's a good amount of time. If you want to be a patron of the show, check out the Patreon page. You can participate at a $1, $3, $5 level or more. You get special access to the show and other perks. If you want to sponsor an episode, you can promote anything you want. Just send me an email at info@cameronadair.com. There's other ways to support the show that are helpful. You can always write a rating and review. Do it. You can go to the website and use the affiliate links for Amazon, get a free trial on Audible. You can get server space through Media Temple, domain names, stuff like that. I actually use Audible. I got back into it lately. I've been listening to the new Malcolm Gladwell audiobook, which is pretty interesting. It's like a little documentary, sociology, economics, sort of pop economic thing that he does. And I listened to the Douglas Murray book, and I'm listening to a Christopher Hitchens book right now. You got to get the ones that are read by the author. And it's kind of a cop-out from reading an actual book, but I like it. I like hearing the author's voice. You can also leave a voice message for the show through a link in the notes. Here's the show. The 90th most popular podcast in the universe with me, Cameron. This is episode 31. Today on the show is Robert Hansen. He's a musician and an artist. I met Robert when we were art students at Cal Arts. We talked about religion and ideology. We talked about DXing, which is listening to shortwave radio signals that bounce around the atmosphere over long distances. We talked about Cal Arts. We talked about aggressive social justice trends. I think that stuff is becoming less prevalent. We talked about outsider art, baby boomers, Woodstock, Jimi Hendrix. Here's Robert. All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Finally made it.
Yes, here I am.
You're tied for the rescheduling record.
Yes, and it's really interesting that this is, that I'm discussing this, well, sort of a general problem that I have on the radio, because I was just talking to Sheila about issues with consistency, so I think talking about it on radio will really help.
Talking with who?
Kashila, my mentor.
Oh, who's that?
Oh, Kashila Brooke. She's my friend. She used to teach at Cal Arts. I've been talking to her about issues with consistency, and so she's been helping in that department.
Oh, I don't think I met her.
But yes, I finally made it. I was in the fire, so to speak, dealing with a lot of crap, but it's good to be here.
I started hearing this for the first time recently, that August is like busy or stressful or something, I guess.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I felt like August, this people seem to be a little more uptight or something.
It's also the middle of this. It's now the middle point for summer, August.
Yeah.
But our summer came late. Everything feels, out of whack, but on track in other ways.
I always like August. This was like one of my favorite times of year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's cliche. You like the summer.
Yeah.
I always like August. I just always feel nice in August or in December. December's a little sad.
I'm a big fan of October.
Yeah?
I love the weather. Start to get those warm/cool currents. You don't know which is going to prevail, the hot or the cold. Well, who knows now with all this change in weather?
Yeah, you were talking a minute ago about it's related to climate change, like the thing in Brazil you were saying?
The fire.
Yeah.
Most of the forest is on fire. The rainforest is, referred to as the lungs of the world for good reason. It makes up like 20% of our oxygen. And but I guess the president, or the Bolsonaro, I don't know how to say his name.
I don't know. I'd never heard of this. I'm pretty agnostic to the news cycle.
Are you, in a way, feeling like tuning out? Do you feel over inundated with information and stuff? A lot of folks I've been talking to about this, they're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just not really paying attention to the news anymore. And I think
some things, I've always been like that as an adult. I think that just a lot of things that people tend to latch onto kind of just can seem really myopic and trifling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't like to live in that place. Twitter arguments and just like this stuff. And I hear people talk about it like, are you fucking insane? Like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I just naturally don't pay attention. But a lot of times I find out about stuff late. Even when new music comes out, I'm always late.
Yeah, I struggle in the same way. I feel like I'm always behind in receiving some kind of information that's vital to like what I could be doing to make an impact on the world or whatever it is. But also it's like, I don't know what really to take into account because there's so many opinions and so many, it's overwhelming. There's too much information, too many angles.
It's hard to know what the important information is. You mentioned that thing about Brazil, and then I had just watched this 60 Minutes about the Pacific garbage patch.
Oh, Jesus. Yes.
Which is, global warming, like environmental stuff.
Yeah.
You can tell that, if there's an island of garbage that's bigger than Texas,
mm-hmm.
You can tell.
It's bigger than Texas. Wow.
A lot of the statistics are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But you can tell, like, that sounds important, and plus it doesn't seem like it's maybe getting enough attention from people that are in Twitter arguments.
It's hard to know how to get engaged with such a massive problem, and when there is good news, it's like, oh, someone developed this device that can sweep over the surface of the ocean and collect garbage, and you're like, wonderful.
Yeah.
How's that going to pick up? Who's going to get behind it? What can I do? But by the time you've read that, you're on to the next article about
I'm thinking
the Siberian forest being on fire.
Rodman's in North Korea.
Oh, yeah.
This is important.
Again?
No, that was years ago, but that's like came into my head of like something that's just fucking anodyne.
Yeah.
It's like,
theatrical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Theatrics is getting in the way of like things getting done in politics. Look at who we have in office. I'm stating the obvious, but we're up against like the federal government too. That's the other thing, as far as like trying to make shit happen.
Yeah.
So.
And like you said, it's theater. It's just entertainment.
Whole fear mongering now too.
But so what exactly is going on with the rainforest? That sounds like some. Who's the guy that burned all the oil fields? Saddam Hussein, right? That burned all the oil fields.
Oh, you're tracing back to.
Well, what it sounds like is some. I don't know.
There's been infighting between. And I just read his name, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing it right, so I'm a little embarrassed. But Bolsonaro, I think that's how you say it. And my understanding is that he's a fanatic Christian, very conservative, and so there's a history of conservative evangelicals, Christians fighting with indigenous people, and there's been on the rise for a while now activism amongst various tribes living in the forest. And because you have this conservative religious nut who sees them as savages, basically, there's been this kind of war over territory. And it's been bad. Like, people getting killed, just run over. You see large, families, both animals and and just kind of like off to the wayside, huddling and not sure what to do. So there's just like massive devastation, all because of this guy's religious beliefs, but also his greed. Like it's also to make money. So when you have, and this, I believe both sides are totally infused to him in terms of being a religious nut and also just greedy.
Being a tyrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these horrible combinations in our leaders now. Whereas before one was just a kind of masquerade. Now it's like one before.
Evangelicals are.
Like how did Ronald Reagan, like he was conservative, right? Was he Christian?
Mm-hmm.
But was he trying to what extent was his religious beliefs like shaping
his policies?
Exactly. Yeah,
right.
Trump, I don't know that he's so religious.
No,
Mike Pence is, and he kind of serves.
Yeah, those guys are terrifying, but no, I think Trump is like more than anything else just a cluster B personality type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know to what degree. I'm not a psychologist, but I think more than anything else, that's his MO. Is like he just doesn't have control over the fact that he's a sociopath or a narcissist or antisocial or whatever it is. Well, that's how I see it. He was pandering to the evangelicals to get that vote, I think, at one time.
It happens to be that a lot of the folks he's basically handing our money over to happen to be like these religious nuts who have no interest in multiculturalism.
Right.
They're from small towns that, I don't know what it is actually. I don't even want to form a stereotype, but it's just like.
I watched this Netflix thing on the history of evangelicalism in the U.S. It was okay. It was kind of a goofy, like surface level documentary, but it's pretty scary because it's woven into the U.S. politics in a way like you wouldn't believe. I mean, the scariest thing about someone who's in any cult, whether it's Christianity or anything else, is that they have the ability to let go of any accountability, because they think that they're doing the right thing, and so that gives them a pass to not be ethically accountable for doing dangerous things.
Yeah.
And so these people, they're brainwashed, right? So these guys are like a rat with a parasite in its head. They're doing dangerous things that they shouldn't be doing because they think that they're, going to heaven.
Yeah. Well, the KKK started out as a cult, right? Sort of.
Sure.
And now it's like, what's different is you have people walking around that look like hipsters, but they're really like far-right extremists, white supremacists. And so the ideology or whatever, of a smaller thing became like, I mean, the racism has always been there, but they're sort of like a group that kind of gave a head to it, all the garbs and everything,
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is like with cults, is usually like what happens to their young. Anyone who grows up in a cult, like they're kind of hardwired, they're fucked up.
Yeah, this documentary, there's like little communities in, I want to say, in like New England, in like Massachusetts somewhere, where they take these kids, and instead of going to college, these kids from pretty much, from the Midwest and the East Coast, they go to these like fraternities, and they are basically, they like clean the grounds and read the Bible every day, and basically are just kind of interns for the evangelical leaders. These guys that are really fundamental evangelicals, and they have like world leaders stay at their houses, and they just entertain, and they know everybody.
Yeah.
But these kids, it follows these kids. It's all reenacted, which is kind of silly. I remember that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just so scarily brainwashed. Like 20-year-olds, like they're spending their 20s doing this instead of college.
Yeah.
Whenever there's somebody who leaves, whether it's a Children of God survivor, or what was the Haley Bob Heaven's Gate survivor. Those people are so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Especially if they've had to reconcile it in their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
To listen to people like that is like, wow. Like,
that's generally where you really get an inside story. Yeah. Because all the adults end up killing themselves or each other. But I'm thinking of the outcomes of more violent cults, but like there's subtle forms of violence too. I think with religious fanaticism, it's not just with evangelicals, it's just religion in general and fanaticism, but they happen to, for whatever reason, be in office most. Christians happen to take office most. But to what extent is our country not a cult now? It's just one large cult, with, the right-wing extremists or whoever is in power.
If any sort of ideology is dangerous, you could apply that to anything. I mean, it's probably a spectrum of like, how ideological and dangerous are you with anything, whether it's fucking anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is why it can't be so general. But like,
yeah.
But what I mean to say is like, we're all on some level functioning in an unhealthy, habitual way, much like how a cult does. But it's just like maybe I'm getting too abstract here, schizoid, but like maybe it's, it's just us sitting at the computer every day. And even though we're not with other people, that's what everyone else in the world is kind of doing.
Yeah.
And putting their faith into.
Yeah.
So I wonder about like peripheral cults.
Yeah. Technology, these phones.
So to avoid getting entrapped in ideology or anything like that, I don't think our government's a cult, but I was trying to get abstract and draw parallels.
No, I know.
But
what isn't dangerous or...
Right.
I'm trying to think of a better
I guess a petting zoo.
But those poor animals are trapped.
They're trapped. One might be missing their mother and has developed a heart condition. Could drop at any moment. But yeah, no, you're right. Like, what is it not dangerous to be consumed by ideology?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. People don't want to think about that all day. They don't want to think about... Yeah, when you're not giving yourself over to something like watching a TV show or looking at your phone all day or feeling good about Donald Trump at the rally, no one wants to think about the opposite, which is like, we're all going to die. And like, I feel like that's the entry point there.
In the past, this past month, I've been in shock because it's finally hitting me that we've been sitting around wondering when Doomsday is going to happen. Now it's on the rise. It's happening. And that's what's frightening because to go back like to the forest in Brazil being on fire, almost all of it. And in Russia, the Siberian forest, almost all, like, I think it was like 10 million, I forget, it's a measure of unit that I can't remember, but 10 million whatever, massive. And then in Alaska. So you have like these triangulated points of destruction, and it feels like it's enclosing. And then we just had the one, of course, in California, the Woolsey fire. So I'm just noticing a pattern, but so there's sort of a...
That was the one down here, right? Not the one in Sonoma?
Sonoma, yeah. I'm also, though, an avid listener of shortwave and longwave radio. And
yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Like DXing. I love to DX, which is basically finding various coordinates for like propagation. So you listen for weird sounds and whatnot. Or some people want to get like a good signal from far away. Some people just want to hear weird sounds. But there's the idea that through radio propagation, through VLF radio and all this, just through listening, you can hear how the environment is changing. And in the past, like after like maybe 7 years of being an avid listener, just of random stations and whatnot, I'm noticing like this increase in pitch and all this stuff. And so intuitively, I looked it up. If you could measure, how things change in our environment based on radio waves, and you can. and it's changing drastically. And so I want to do an album now, just of these frequencies.
Well,
Doomsday frequencies.
I'm a little worried that you're telling me that the shortwave radio is telling you that the doomsday is coming, and I'm thinking, Robbie,
yeah, it sounds schizoid.
It does.
But I'm trying to back it up. If you go online, and look up what radio frequencies can tell us about global warming, you'll get a tremendous amount of
really
information on what to listen for and all that. And so it's very interesting, that you get people in downtown Los Angeles with tinfoil bunched up on their heads trying to pick up radio frequencies, to detect change in their environment. But no, there's a hard science behind it too. And that to me is somewhat evident. And then also what's happening with the fires. They say if we stop eating meat, right, that's going to help.
Because of the greenhouse gases?
And they're cutting down the trees for fill.
Oh.
And our food. Burger King.
Man.
Burger King is really
so
to blame.
Up. Food is so fucked, dude.
You're eating trees. We're eating our trees and the meat.
Yeah.
Meat and trees. I mean, yeah. How much more gluttonous can we get?
Yeah.
It's like, so I want to stop eating meat.
So what do you need to listen to a shortwave radio? Is there like a device?
Most enthusiasts of DXers, I call them, they have units, in various long-wave and short-wave radios with various antennas and whatnot, and functions as far as like being able to get in between stations and really dial in.
To really minute frequencies?
Yeah. And then pick that up by canceling out various noise.
Does shortwave mean that it's below AM?
Below?
Right, because the frequencies of AM are slower.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, 500 hertz. And then once you go to FM, you're up higher. So you're like 800 and above.
Yeah, so I think you're right. Yeah, shortwave would include those two zones, but also all of the propagation in between the points of, where these signals are being sent out. So propagation is how a signal goes from one tower to the next, and if it distorts and so forth, you don't have great propagation happening.
Huh.
So
when you're picking a frequency to listen to, and this isn't yet getting to what DXing is, but when you're picking a shortwave frequency, you're picking like, instead of 900 something hertz is a classical station in LA, but you're doing like 900 point blah, 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 blah.
Exactly,
and it's even a smaller fraction of the specific.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what shortwave is?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of like navigating shortwave, AM to FM and all in between, but you can go a little bit outside of that range too. And then long wave, I believe, is beyond that. But in terms of what those little units are called, like as you go 0.1, 0.2, or decibels or whatever. I'm not sure. I forget what that's called. I have a PL-880 Texan, TECSUN. Yeah. Okay. It's a shortwave. On it, what makes it special are these features where you can cancel out noise. So if you hear a sound you like, it can be somewhat directional and pick up and amplify that sound with various controls and sliders. So for a shortwave radio, it's like really advanced, and it's the best you can get. Like, here I'm advertising for Texan now, but it's the best you can get on the market.
Just hit the forums, folks.
Yeah.
Just go on those DXing forums.
But for beginners,
put your tinfoil hat on.
Yeah. That's the cheapest route to take, the tinfoil. But So the PL-880, I think it's like $120. But if you're just starting out, you can at least really get a feel for, all that's involved. But for people who are really advanced, they have a ton of different radios and antennas and various consoles just for like noise cancellation, stuff like that. So I'm not at that point, but I definitely love listening to noise, atmospheric noise, VLF frequencies I love to hear. And sometimes if you're driving in your car and it's raining, the antenna will pick up what's called an electromagnetic frequency. And so if you put on your turn signal, it'll sound like a kick drum over the radio.
Yeah.
So it picks up. So I'm interested in that sort of phenomena too. And like, again, the point is that radio is, definitely linked to our atmosphere and what's going on in it. So
I got really sick. I think it was when I had food poisoning. And I became really conscious of, this is going to sound a little tinfoil hatty, but I became really conscious of...
Let's go full tinfoil.
Of the Wi-Fi on my phone and the cell frequency on the phone. Because these are different frequencies too. Like Wi-Fi is a set of frequencies, if not just one frequency. And then the cell phone towers are just like radio, only way high up. So your highest radio station is like whatever, 1,000 something kilohertz, but like cell frequencies are like way, like hundreds of thousands of kilohertz. So when I was really sick, I felt like this was giving me a headache, and I would turn this off and just like feel better. So
Interesting.
But I don't know how crazy that is.
Well, I definitely have had conversations where I realize, we've been talking for an hour and my head hurts, or my ear feels hot, or my...
when you're holding the phone to your head?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the only example that I have of feeling some kind of like...
microwaving your
microwave,
brain.
Of cells or something like little... But especially with flip phones.
How could it not? I mean...
Flip phones are terrible.
Yeah, I admire the people that carry flip phones in 2019.
That's me.
God.
Yeah. And I recently turned on one of my old Nokia phones, 2001.
Hell yeah.
And I had a little message on there from my friend Massa, high school friend.
How old was it?
Massa,
Message.
you remember Massa? Yeah.
I remember the name, and I'd remember her, right? Or no, Massa's a guy. Okay. I have a vague recollection of.
I wonder what she's up to. Massa, if you're listening to this, give me a call. Yeah, she was great. She joined the circus, I think. The Italian circus.
Cool.
Less sideshow, more like, look what sort of stunts I can do.
Yeah, the days when we were at Cal Arts seem so far away now. I changed a lot after I left. I feel like my formative years happened after that.
Me too. Yeah. Well, you went to...
It just seems like I don't know that guy that was me.
We both went to Cal Arts right out of high school, yeah? Looking back, I wonder, had I had maybe a few years off, what my approach would have been to getting a degree. While I was there, I was definitely... I felt influenced, but also wanting to be rebellious. So I was in this strange like time warp, or I didn't know how to behave or what to do, or if I even had my own opinions. And then the formative years came after, and then I kind of realized, I agree with this person and that person. I remember like what all the teachers, most of it anyway, but now I can really look back and disagree with certain figures. And granted, they've probably changed, but like that's what it means to go to college. I guess art school, I should say.
I think that's a pretty common understanding of going to college, is that you'd probably be better off if you were a little older.
Yeah. Right when I dropped onto that saddle, I was kicking. Yeah, I was looking back. I remember some things that some of the instructors said to me, and basically it's like, wow, I really was a problem child. I was like stealing books, tearing them up, just like a baby. Like I can't. For my collages, my and all that stuff, and stealing food from the cafeteria constantly.
Yeah.
I look back at that experience as having bought time to kind of settle the rebellion, aimless rebellion, I should say. When you're kicking at nothing, it's like, put your leg away, boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, how was your experience?
I don't know. I had a hard time. I don't know. I haven't thought about it in so long.
Yeah.
I didn't really kind of start feeling good until I'd left and moved to San Francisco, and just felt more like a real person in society.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I feel like I think I wasn't receptive to the level of education or the opportunities there. that I would have been if I had been older or known what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And then I hate being in the suburbs. I'm just like I'm pretty sensitive in my environment.
Yeah, me too.
And
I grew up in the suburbs. I was trying to escape the suburbs. And then it's like I landed again in the suburbs. And it was like, what? Yeah, totally. Yeah. They need to move that place to some other, like to a mountain. Make it like Black Mountain College or something. It was a school. I don't think it's around anymore, but I think John Cage taught there.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. The guy who developed that whole book on color theory. What's his name?
I don't know.
But we're art students. We should know this stuff. And a lot of it's escaped me. But I definitely know what kind of art I like now.
Yeah, me too.
And I've definitely learned too that you can't just call yourself an artist. You earn that title. Things like that, have become big lessons.
I think a lot of big lessons for me because I grew up really young just being told to do music, and like every school I went to was music focused. And once I left Cal Arts, I learned a lot just realizing that this isn't everyone's worldview. You said that you can't just call yourself an artist. You have to earn that on some level, but like some people don't even know. Like it's just not part of their world.
Yeah.
To be creative.
Yeah.
Having to like contend with that it's kind of comforting, actually.
It would be easier for me to say you can't just call yourself an artist. You have to earn that title. To say like a rich person who's kind of like buying their way into the art world or whatever. And much harder to someone who's like from a poor family and they really have this dream.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that, but like it's true. And that I think is the hardest thing to grapple for a lot of people coming out of art school, is that sort of realization. But I also, on the flip side, I believe you can be an important person in the field of arts just through your interest and through preservation and all that stuff. And that's just as important as, say, like an artist.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know any different. I only applied to one college.
Well, you weren't in the arts program.
I was.
You were, and then you went to the music.
I was. That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I switched because I was lost.
Sorry, I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like the level of education there was good had I been a more mature boy. And a lot of college, too, is just kind of being in this community that can give you access or like even show you how to get yourself access, if that makes any sense. It's not like you go there and memorize the encyclopedia. You go there and they kind of open this world to you that you now have experienced. And that's something that really sticks with you.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of do anything you want that's within that world. You can say, well, I want to teach myself how to do this, or I want to go in this direction. And now you have a couple steps that are going to be easier for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like hearing, and I don't mean to sound like haughty, but listening to other people describe a community college class, it just kind of seems like a joke compared to some of the things.
Yeah. I mean, having taken a few courses myself at a community college, what a difference. Yeah. And while at Cal Arts, I definitely felt like I was able to buy time and sort some things out. It's also a privilege in a way to be able to do that. But there is also a storm of influence and of opinions, and I was just too young, I think. But maybe that was the right time. Maybe I dealt with something at an earlier age that I wouldn't have dealt with later. I don't know.
Well, the storm is kind of contained within academia. I don't want to talk like over my head, and I kind of feel like I maybe am a little bit, but like that storm is just kind of synonymous with academia, where everything's just kind of spinning. And no, really,
Yeah.
And I'm also glad that I'm not having to go to a liberal arts or private college now. Because
I laugh because go on. Sorry.
Yeah, because a lot of these kind of weird social issues that are absurd to me seem to just be.
We could
love it there.
We could dive into some of that. I will say before diving in, it seems to be going to the wayside a little bit as far as people constantly screaming about preferences when no one's even offended them, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what direction we're going? Constructions of safe space that are actually for people with privilege in a school setting. It's not so much about creating safe spaces in like urban environments.
Yeah, or just being so preoccupied with safe spaces when you're 19 years old. Like shut up. Not even safe space, but just the whole thing. You can spot it a mile. I can. I'm like so acute to it.
Mm-hmm. It's the way that people control other people now, I've noticed. That's the problem I have with it. As far as, and granted, I have met people who are a part of this dialogue who and I have a few friends who are trans, non-binary, and whatnot. And there's this general way of communication that's always been free between me and my friends. But I've noticed there's this other thing that's formed over time where people are assuming. So it's more of a problem of like you meet someone and they sort of have this agenda to really be clear on where they stand.
Right.
And it's almost too much because then the focus is on like these kind of rules and then you feel small.
Yeah. Well,
but I encourage people to call me whatever they want because I like people coming up with names and things.
When you're approaching the world in a way that's predicated like that, you're being hypocritical because you're now carrying this sword of nobility and justice, but you didn't have to pick it up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're a hypocrite. No one's fighting you. Does that make sense?
You're talking about like certain people who within a group that is seeking social justice as being too outraged or too like, is that what you're saying? Or would you say in general?
Preoccupied by it. And applying it to everything and just walking around waiting for a reason to bring it up and apply it to things. You got it so easy at that point. No one cares. When I was talking to, on a previous episode, the one with Erlen, he's a professor at an Ivy League school who teaches fine art. So he has to deal with this stuff every day. He doesn't have a hard stance on it, and neither do I. But he's saying like, he's Haitian, so he's very, as he would call it, melanated. And he's saying like, dude, if you go anywhere else in the world, they don't care. You could get shot. No one's going to have this conversation with you. I really agree with that. It's a little naive, and you've had the opportunity to have this problem.
And my problem isn't so much with people being treated fairly or with people being heard. My problem is when at the forefront of that movement, there's like this knee-jerk reaction to anyone and everyone that's, whether they're a student of their movement, they're trying to understand what they're about, there's like this bulldozing effect. And I see that with a lot of different groups. And then you have some people within the group who aren't like that. And then, you know, I don't know. But like the strangest conversation I ever had was recently on the topic of like identity was, I won't say her name, but it was with this gal. And it was after a lecture. And she said that she identified as such. I don't know how the conversation led to that. And then I told her that I identify as a man, I might be kind of effeminate, whatever. And I was trying to just gloss over that and move on in the conversation. And she stopped me and she's like, no, you're non-binary. And I was like, what? So suddenly there's like this authority or something that I was...
Yeah, it's like she's trying to indoctrinate you.
Yeah, but I didn't take that as a sign of like the whole... I see that as like a problem with younger people. I've noticed with older folks who in the 70s were talking about these same issues and whatnot, they're not as outraged or at the forefront, you know, fuck you, and like all, you know, just to whoever they assume is, you know, it seems like a problem with younger people, with a younger generation, just having come out of college and they're all worked up. That's where I see it kind of floundering or not working out. Like
you'll see in colleges that it'll come into my world. Like you'll see it on the news or hear about it, and it's just like this infighting reality show version of some person who's been persecuted socially at their college, and it's just like the whole thing is just fucking hand to face.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I said, it's like, I'm glad I'm not in that world now, because it just seems to be a lot of colleges and just people with a little too much time to be
It's more
thinking.
arguing than actualization. It's like talking points, but nothing's happening. But in another way, things are happening too from those talking points, but I don't know that in the way that they totally intended. Maybe the older generation kind of things kind of opened up for them, and now we have TV shows being made with all trans casts and whatnot.
Well, Matt, the guy on the last episode, he's an actor, a seriously trained actor. And he was saying that he can't get a role because he's a white male.
Can't get a role because he's a white male?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He knows like a lot of Hollywood people.
It's not
in the
because
acting world.
Is he a good actor? Okay.
Yeah, he's smart, and he went to college for acting and was in UCB in New York. Yeah, he's saying some of his friends that he knows that are agents, they're like, yeah, dude, there's no way I could cast you just because you're white. And on the same show, I kept saying, oh, you got to see this movie that I really like. And then I also kind of realized that a movie's going to get made, a show's going to get made, but it definitely has to be some kind of social issue in it.
I'm not personally so annoyed or so aware of that problem as far as white people having trouble being casted in film. As far as I know, that up until this point, if any white people are to feel impatient with this new trend of like more, I don't know, other people getting hired for film, they have to remember the things in the context of Hollywood and its history and how people have generally been casted and why. And
they're trying to correct a problem. That's how he put it.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know what exactly, maybe it was a specific film or something. But I think...
What are you doing? You're erasing history? I mean, isn't it hypocritical?
I don't... Wait, who's erasing history?
You're saying, like, okay, so the history of Hollywood, it's not fair. It's like, it's off balance somehow.
I'm not saying whether it's fair or not. Yeah. I'm just saying that's the reality of what it's been. I think,
by changing it now, you're trying to... the way he put it was they're trying to correct a problem. They're trying to correct the injustice and just unfairness. But then it's now reverse discrimination, and it's hypocritical. If you're really being egalitarian, then you wouldn't be doing that in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's a little too soon. While it may seem the evidence is there for being discriminated against or whatnot, systemically and in society, not really still. So I guess I would have to disagree with him, but I also don't know the nature of the film or like what all the particulars. But
I don't know. I don't know the particulars either.
Yeah, but I mean, what I mean to say is, it's something that's being talked about. It's in a lot of more extremist right-wing groups are talking about it, and then you have like people who identify as Democrat. I'm just noticing a lot of different white people of different political affiliation are talking about feeling discriminated against. I don't fully see it or understand it, but that's not to say that I haven't had conversations where it feels like there's something being left out because it's assumed that I can't understand, or you know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. Being a canvasser, a poster boy for 10 years, and having to go to all these different neighborhoods and talk to different small business owners and whatnot, I kind of earned good rapport with these folks. And so barriers were kind of broken down. And so when people talk about often feeling discriminated against or whatever, I wonder how many people they're talking to or seeing. Because I like that in a day for my job, I'd have to go from store to store to store to store. And then I'd kind of get a good reading or feel for generally, you know, how people react to, I don't know, me being a white guy and generally I didn't notice any, but that was in a business setting, right? So in what setting do we feel rejection?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why I, like I said, wanted to get out of the suburbs as a kid. I feel safer when there's like just more of, I guess, like a human element to life. Like you're saying, how many people they're even interfacing with. I always said that in San Francisco, people are so forgiving of each other's suffering because it's like fucking hard to live there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is. If you don't have money, it's really hard.
Yeah. And people are so forgiving and they're like, man, like it's hard, right? Yeah, it's hard. And then there's this rapport and it's like a human exchange.
What we all need to be doing more of is looking at what we do day to day habitually and the sort of people we meet, the zones we're going to and whatnot, and then thinking about how that informs our ideology about the rest of the world. Because too often we're all talking about the same world, but kind of live a different life, go to different nooks of the world, different parts, and it's all different. It really is in terms of what's happening in life and what those things are saying about the larger picture.
We both live in Los Angeles. And so maybe the guy, you said how many people there you're even interacting with. I mean, maybe that's all they have in a small private liberal arts college or in Kentucky. Yeah, maybe that's all they have. I mean, maybe there's just not that much exposure. Mm-hmm. And so that's where a lot of it comes from. We're not losing anybody.
I hope we're engaging people who are interested in genuine, I could be wrong. So.
Right. Okay. Right, exactly. Okay.
So I'm fine with being wrong. So please call in and correct me. Our number is. We got to do a call in.
You can leave a message there's a voice message.
But what I like about this conversation is it's honest and it's going forward.
How did you learn piano?
Intuitively at first, noodling around on the keyboard, and it was after having had a ear surgery, because prior there was blockage and infection, and so for 3 years I wasn't able to hear all that well. I'm not trying to make it sound too romantic here, but or too amazing, but truly to me it is phenomenal. I could have been deaf and had a series of...
As a kid?
Yeah, and so I had some surgeries done, and then right after that, at first I was frightened by sound, terrified, and then after a month started using the piano, and through action and touch and whatnot was kind of gauging sound and getting back into a world of sound. And that whole month I was in the house recovering. And also prior to that, I had an illness. From there, I got involved with a piano instructor, but never really absorbed. Still, even to this day, I can sort of read music, but not really. So I mostly play by ear or from whatever I hear in my head.
And you said that based on whatever tests you did, that you should be a musical therapist. And you learned piano after you were recovering from physical problems. Music was therapy for you.
Absolutely. And in a strange way, also cathartic. There is something religious about it. I was rejecting God by playing the piano in a strange way, realizing that I could be a creative and giving person. And it was through the piano that I started isolating myself. They put a piano in the garage, and I just started to come up with ideas about life. It was instrumental not in just making music, but also in me just kind of being calm and thinking and coming up with ideas that didn't really even relate to music. So it was just streamlined thinking, and the piano helped with that.
When I got this piano, I got these two. On the back of these, not that one. Schirmer, G. Schirmer, the oldest music publisher in the U.S. On the back of their logo, it says in Latin, Laborum Dulce Lenamen. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I could figure two of those out. What is Lenamen? And it's labor, sweetness, dulce, obviously. And then Lenamen is soothing or alleviation.
Haven't noticed that either. I actually used to have the same book, and I think a lot of teachers... Read off the title again. Is the
G. Schirmer.
Yeah,
is the publisher. That's Chopin.
Nocturnes. A lot of students have that, or
Yeah.
use a.
I just thought, like, as far as you're saying that it became, I forget exactly what you said, but I thought that's what it is, right? Labor, sweetness, alleviation.
Exactly.
It's-
No, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, for me initially, and then it became very serious as far as making music and wanting to be respected for the music I was making. Then I became really hard on myself. I still am incredibly hard on myself, and that most everything I do, I think, is crap. I don't really enjoy it. I enjoy it as I make it, but in post, I'm like, I don't like this,
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So what at one time was like just kind of a form of serenity,
Yeah.
became this serious thing, like something that has to be a money-making machine now or something.
Right.
So it's like, because the old cliche, I can't really do anything else.
The alleviation, like the soothing part of it, and then the labor part of it. I just thought that was so interesting. Something you said just made me immediately think of that, because I saw that, I think, 2 days ago. What do you mean you're rejecting God? And most people would say it's the opposite, right? If you're participating in art to some degree, you're like having, and without sounding too crazy, you're kind of having like a conversation, like a relationship with God in art. I mean, it's a way of not only the fact that it, lives a lot longer than a human does, but it's also you're communicating just on a bigger level. So, but I always thought, what do you mean rejecting?
I guess I could give like a little more context. It's been studied and it's come out as a fact that children who are raised in a deeply religious upbringing usually aren't so compassionate and whatnot. Whereas someone who grows up without religious indoctrination, they're usually more compassionate and whatnot. And that's according to this article. And I don't know how you would measure that or come up with a statistic for that. I don't know if I fully believe it, but nonetheless, that's where I what was I saying?
Well,
so
that art
there's
is rejecting God rather than the opposite.
Yeah, so what
That it's like freeing you from maybe a bad relationship with God.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is what I wanted to say. So I didn't have a good or bad relationship to God. It was more that there was this indoctrination on my dad's part of any ideas I would get weren't my own. They came through me from God. I was constantly told this, and I felt like, well, I'm not some puppet.
Yeah.
And so at a very young age, I remember this happening. And I think it was like maybe age 7 or 8, I had like this intense breakthrough of realizing I don't believe in God or Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And
What
music.
about aliens?
Maybe. I do believe in aliens.
The supernatural.
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe through being a creator from the place of feeling like it's coming out of you. And yeah, it has other attachments to things in the world.
Yeah.
You're shaped by the world, but not some authority or a godlike figure telling you what to do and puppeteering your body. That's at least how I was presented to God, as this thing that, don't displease God, And so by playing piano and feeling deeply and just being instrumental in what I was feeling deeply and just letting it all hang out through the piano, however cheesy that might sound to someone else.
Right.
At that age, being able to do that felt, like I could be free from God. It's like, I have my own my own pavilion here. And within the house, there was like a lot of tension. And another way too, the piano was like a spaceship. I would just play it, and all of a sudden I wasn't on planet Earth or something. Yeah, when I stopped believing God, it was definitely like this rejection. It was like, aha! And then you just kind of disappeared from I was like, fuck you, see you later. But yeah, I don't believe in God, but I definitely don't think I'm my own God either. So.
Well, it's both, right? I mean, that's what I always felt like.
I think of myself, not to be so like negative, but as more like a parasite. Like I agree with William Burroughs, like humans really are just parasites, colorful parasites.
Wow.
Like we eat, we devour.
I guess.
Yeah.
How is it any more of a parasite than
Because we're
then
killing
ape.
off all these other species. And
Okay.
Like, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I don't feel that way because I don't feel like I participate in that so much. I mean, I really try to just remain a human. I mean, I think of people like we're just a bunch of demented apes with no fur.
With the Trader Joe's just down the way from wherever we're living.
Yeah, parasite. I mean, it's like in the Matrix where the agent says that. He's like,
oh yeah.
Are a disease.
Oh God, I hated that movie.
I hated it too, but I actually wanted to watch.
I thought it was so dang cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, oof.
But probably so was Johnny Mnemonic when that came out, and I could watch that right now.
Oh yeah.
So maybe you get some distance from it. And this is just another goofy Keanu Reeves movie. That we all.
He's always talking like from the side. Like there's like a profile of him and he's talking. It's like, look at the damn camera. But I'm excited about Bill and Ted 2 or 3 coming out.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I think I saw something about it.
But time travel, all that, I hope piques people's interest again.
So.
But back to, what should we go back to? We're covering too much here.
I don't know.
Scrambled eggs. But that can be a beautiful thing. Alchemy, either way, right?
I always thought of art, whether it's music or anything else, as like a combination between you're channeling something that you could call it God or you could call it tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 1/3 that, and then it's 1/3 your will, like your rejection of that. You being able to change the world in space and time right now. And then the other third is the thing that comes out of it.
Yeah.
But so you connect those two things, and then the third thing is the new thing, is the art, what you've created.
It's a fantastic question. For me, it's simpler in that I just can't help but not think of like just the people I've met in my life and how they've influenced me. It's not so much like God or this other thing coming through me. It's like what the people I've experienced in my life. So God to me is like of many bodies, and there's a thing of impermanence to that. They die eventually. So it's like, it's cultural. It's also like tied into who I meet and speak to. And that is ultimately the informative power, the thing that's speaking through me, is like, are these people I meet and talk to or the books I pick. Yeah. So as far as this other worldly thing, I can also be lofty and think about like, part of me also, in a weird way, believes in ghosts, but I'm like, so I don't know. But what does that have to do with God? Everything, maybe, because God, in a way, is a ghost.
He's, it's supernatural.
Supernatural, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that you said it was like a rejection of God, and I just didn't understand that. But then you explained the context, and it made sense. You said you were sick before you had the ear thing?
Well, I was sticking
life
things
threatening as a kid?
No. Basically, the infections, my parents had divorced, and I was just like devastated, sick all the time, sticking things in my ears, like Band-Aids and paper clips. I have no idea why. I was having like a breakdown at the age of 5 or something. No tiny violins, it's nothing like that. I hope I don't sound insufferable. It's just what happened. But like, these things I was sticking in my ears got like really infected, and then for like 2 years I couldn't hear, and they pulled all this shit out of my ear like a year later. No joke. Yeah, no joke. I wish I could bring my mom on the air right now, because she'd be like, honey, this is how, she could correct some of this stuff. But that's pretty much what happened. And then my memory's a bit hazy on like exactly why I was doing that.
So they pulled a cyan crayon out of your
Band-Aid,
frontal
a really
lobe.
stinky Band-Aid, part of a paper clip in the other ear that was infected really bad.
Oh man.
And I wonder why I didn't go to the
Robbie,
hospital sooner, or like, I don't know. There's all these
taking
questions.
care of this kid.
Yeah, there's all these questions. But once the relief from all that came, music came immediately. So I was just sick. My immune system wasn't doing so good from infection and stress. When there was that release, it was like what could have been hardwiring in my brain.
Yeah.
It was like I had to become my own God, you know what I mean? In terms of what was going on.
To conquer this thing.
Yeah, the childhood abuse, neglect, all that. I love my mom, by the way. She's great. It's not to do with her. I think a lot of people who have grown up in traumatic situations are like trying to find a way to talk about it without being insufferable or annoying. And that's really hard to do because most people don't want to hear about it. They don't even, or it just sounds whiny or something. It's like, I think we're getting to a place with all like these movements and stuff, the Me Too movement and all that. And then it seems phony. And then there's like substance that comes out of it, or, all these things are happening to where people are starting to think more critically about how they can tell their story, or at least I am. But, and some people are realizing maybe there's nothing really to say at all. So we're going through like a social movement right now of like self-discovery.
It is difficult. It's difficult to, you really have to think a lot and spend a lot of time with yourself to be able to express your story. Because the world is a traumatic place, and to be able to like resolve the world for yourself is
it's a
pretty tall order.
Yeah, because it's a matter of either being too insular or too open.
Sure.
And where's the great between?
Yeah.
And that's what I've always found difficult. Is like, am I saying too much? Am I saying too little? Am I saying the right thing, the wrong thing? In terms of talking about the issues that matter or whatever in your mind is just pervading and is nonstop and makes you do things habitually.
I did want to say, though...
Yeah, I'm going to try and be less abstract for a sec.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've always, to me, seemed to have this built-in... You understand creativity on a way that I rarely, if ever, have seen before. And I mean that as a compliment. I admire that in you. And I've always seen that. It's like, you have some understanding that... everybody does in their own way. But you're like genuinely have just creativity.
Cool. Man.
So I do want to say that.
Thank you. That's wonderful and delightful to hear.
And I'm sure if I said that to someone else that knows you too, they would say the same thing.
Wow. Yeah. It's hard to know when you're, I've been too insular, like I don't really know what's going on half the time with my shit. When I put it out, I don't get a lot of feedback. So you saying that as far as feeling like I'm really invested and thinking about it on another level is rewarding, because I hope ultimately what I'm doing says just that I'm really invested in the spirit of art making. That's more important to me than having the last word or saying something conceptual in some ice cold hall with all these snotty people walking around. I could never do that.
Put it this way, if you put me in a room and said, go make something, I'm always trying to take stuff apart and like codify and reverse engineer. That's just how my relationship with creativity. I feel like Robbie would just like, there would just be piles everywhere. You're like tapped in.
It's true. There are piles, some of them porno magazines, but yeah. But yeah, man, I appreciate hearing that. But I wonder to what extent it's a problem. I have like difficulty focusing on one thing, completing things. But in terms of wanting to exist in a place where creativity feels like, I don't want to say spiritual. No, I do. Why not? It can be.
Well, I was going to say it can be a dangerous term.
Yeah. Maybe I should explain my use of, but yeah.
I can take it at face value.
Mind you, I don't believe in God, but I am a spiritual person. Just choking on a jelly bean. Ronald Reagan. But yeah. What I've been hearing lately is, and that keeps coming up as piles are forming around me, and I'm like, oh, what is all this for? I keep hearing from people that like artists need to stop being creative. And I'm like, wait, and like get down with these social issues for the reason of being like, I guess generally more aware, or is that an assumption that these people are making? But have you heard that argument before, that artists need to stop making art and just like become activists? I've heard it a few times on Facebook from various faculty members at Keller's.
Yeah,
and it's just like
a little cringy to me.
Cringy, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So back to that whole...
Again, trying to indoctrinate you into this weird ideology. But
I want to pay you a compliment too, not just, I'm kind of surprised that you are telling me, with your sound, there's something, your process is somewhat reductive, or you're trying to take it from every angle and like it doesn't feel immediate or something. Because your guitar playing has this kind of genuine fluidity to it that shows that like you're invested in just the spirit of the thing they are making, you know, and so that reads through, and I think that's wonderful. When it comes to that process of championing one part and trying to make these parts fit together and seeing it from every angle, I wonder for folks that are even maybe too analytical of what they're making, if they just really focus on the parts that sound like that, like them just being in a moment of serenity or something, and bring that out, then process will kind of nip itself in the butt and not be so drawn out. I don't know, but there's also the idea that our first idea is our best idea. I don't know how much I agree with that. And I can also be, like, I get really invested with editing things down and taking things out and all that. Because that's what I'm after, is making sure it sounds not edited, but ironically, I'm editing the fuck out of it. You know?
Yeah. I think a lot of that is because there was stringed instruments put into my little baby hands 30 years ago. So I can't get rid of that.
So your parents, they've always...
Yeah. Practice an hour a day.
Damn.
For a decade.
Yeah.
Maybe less. Like, I think, until I was like 9. Yeah. It's like 5 years, I think. Definitely an hour a day for 5 years. Before homework, you're not going to friends' houses, private lessons every week up until well through high school. And then went all the way through the Suzuki method at a young age, which I think is like, someone out there can correct me, I think it's like 12 books.
Just dedicated to guitar?
That was all violin.
Oh, violin.
By the time I was a teenager, it was already...
When did you know...
I've been trying to escape it ever since. I tried to escape it by learning the viola. I tried to escape it by learning the trumpet. I tried to escape it by picking up an electric guitar.
When did it all click, when you were like, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I have to do?
It was always in the back of my head, but then it didn't resolve itself with life and reality until I left Cal Arts.
I wonder, for natural-born musicians such as you and I don't think that's necessarily like a compliment or something. It's just naturally some people are born doing one thing, or, you know. I wonder how much that has created kind of a pressure zone of expectation in ourselves. And definitely it's what drives, I think, our practice and all that.
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect of yourself now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What do I expect? Shit.
Yeah.
I mean...
Because when I was 20, I had very high expectations. In fact, I was convinced that I was doing that.
I still like it.
Yeah,
There's
me too.
part of it I still like, because I was able to take all that and, like, reject it. I didn't buy an electric guitar until, I think it was on my 21st birthday, I bought myself an electric guitar. And then that became... I'm past it now. I'm past all the drama of Suzuki method, and we toured nationally for violin, and I competed.
Wow.
It was, oh man.
Are you still playing violin?
There's one in the closet.
Dude.
I mean, I could.
I'm not going to ask you to play
do a little Paganini. I still enjoy it. The time when I was able to like reject that and be like, no, fuck the electric guitar, dude. It's the loudest instrument known to man, and fuck all this. I feel good about it, you know, in a lot of ways.
There are certainly too many albums being pressed and put out by people who can't do it and have access to that. Yeah, and it's crowding the spectrum, so...
There's also a competitive aspect to it where you want to prove the dilettantes wrong and say, I think I can do it better. That's a big part of it for me too, is being competitive.
In a way too, I think I'm competitive, I'm not sure, but I'm not like on a scene. I'm not performing all that much. I did quite a bit in 2007, 2008. Quickly, I just became more invested in like the feeling I got from it. Yeah. It was like a drug. And what was going on the scene, or my status on the scene, just, I don't know why, just stopped mattering to me. That's also what's made it kind of difficult getting the music out there. Like, you have to be on a scene playing shows. These days, things interconnected enough to where, like Billie Eilish or whatever, drop a single on SoundCloud and famous overnight. Like, how does that happen? But
I never believe that.
I don't either, but yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I mean,
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to make the music. I don't know if I'm doing it right in terms of like getting it out there, anything like that. I don't know. But
yeah,
it's good to enjoy it. And I would never want to like graduate to something like that, being famous or whatever. Like, I don't mean to use her as an example. I'm just saying like the extreme.
I don't even know who that is.
I don't know so much either, but overnight she became a sensation. She's
Like that wasn't engineered
yeah.
by
It
Scooter.
definitely, yeah, it is because she's like a walking brand ambassador.
But what I'm saying is if there's some pressure and you just want to take your music drug on your own because that's your relationship with it, it's an even playing field. What's the deal with the DX stuff? You're triangulating geographically, if I'm hearing this right, shortwave signals.
And propagation.
What is that?
How a signal is going from one tower to the next and distorting to then your antenna and how that sounds. Yeah, I want to build like a big archive of VLF phenomena. And it's been done before. Like people have an interest in recording phenomena on the radio. And when I say phenomena, I just mean like in sound. It's not, oh, this could be an alien. It comes with conspiracy theory or anything. It's a wonderful practice because for me anyway, in one way it's a form of meditation. And it's the best kind of guided meditation, I think, you could score because it comes without words. And it's just like this constant, consistent sound, ever changing, but it's still, when I find the right frequency. So I'm doing IDX for two reasons. One is to meditate, and then for the other reason to record and try and get interesting samples and stuff like that. Other people do it not even for the sound at all, but just because they're really into conspiracy theory. So you have people like that. They're trying to listen to Putin or something.
Yeah, you're getting your feet wet, though, with it. There's that aspect to it.
I don't know how like one would be able to do that, like, with a long wave radio.
It sounds like you're like, I'll read Playboy for the articles. That's what it sounds like. I'm not crazy. There's people that are crazy to do it, but.
Yeah, it is. And you'll see these videos on YouTube of DXers who are just really excited about their consoles, like what sort of, and equipment. And that to me is a parallel to like the noise scene in that, you have people who are excited to experiment with different instruments, make different kinds of sound. And then on the other end with DXers, it's like using various stuff to capture sound, It's like kind of the opposite. So they're not creators. They're being creative in the sense of trying to get a sound and through noise reduction rather than creation of, you know what I mean?
What's the jump from shortwave to DX? What does DX stand for?
DX?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, I don't remember.
Oh. But what does it have to do with
this is where I
propagating signals from antenna to antenna? Are you picking it up?
DXing is just picking up various signals.
Okay.
With a long wave radio, and it describes someone.
Long wave radio.
Or shortwave.
Okay.
Yeah. And going in between the stations and trying to, with noise reduction, find various signals that are either appealing to you or like something to do with something you're investigating.
So I actually did some fact checking here because I was a little confused by the way Robert was putting this. The important distinction is between sound waves and electromagnetic waves. Sound waves are completely different. They're carried over electromagnetic waves via amplitude modulation or frequency modulation, AM or FM. That's just the process by which sound is converted into electricity. But the spectrum of electromagnetic waves is what we're talking about here, that goes from slower radio signals up to higher radio signals, TV signals, cell phones, the light spectrum, red through violet, X-rays, radiation, gamma rays, etc. Shortwave refers to a specific set of speeds on the slower end of the electromagnetic spectrum, and DXing stands for distance, and it refers to these waves' ability to bounce off things in the atmosphere and travel long distances, propagate.
So what comes out on shortwave? They must make them, but if you have a scanner that's listened to cell frequencies, that would be insane.
It's a whole world. That's all I can say. It's a world and a culture of listening, and people are DXing all the time. And you have dudes out in Idaho with headphones on all day listening to frequencies in outer space. It's become like this group. It's become a culture. It's become in a weird way. And they have online like forums, clubs, all that stuff.
Do you pick up broadcasts that are recognizable, or is it all just random frequencies bouncing around?
Yeah, you'll pick up a really clear station, or sometimes, depending on how minute you can get with the decibels or whatever we're trying, the units, what we're trying to...
Hertz.
The hertz.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can go and dial and come across all these different odd things happening with VLF and all that. And then suddenly it's like KLX. It's like, So whereas on a normal radio, it's just like you switch from station to station that happens to be really clear and it's calibrated for that. So
what I didn't understand for a long time is it's like this with light. It's just the speed of the wave.
Yeah,
so
I'm a student of all this stuff.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm not an expert in any way. Like, I wish we had my friend Albert on the show, or my friend Joe. I know some people who just really know the technical side of it and could explain it, but I have an interest like in the phenomena. And I think anyone who just kind of dabbles in it can see the appeal. Yeah.
It's almost like taking a telescope, a really powerful telescope, and just scanning the night sky or something.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like measuring what's happening in our atmosphere through radio frequencies, through listening, I'm not an expert in that either, but there is a way to do that, I guess. And then going back to what I was saying before. So this is one of those things where I have to admit I'm a student.
I think I could put it kind of succinctly with sound, is that humans can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Anything below 20 hertz would just be displacing so much air that you would probably just feel it. And then anything above is like dog whistles. And then it's the same thing with light, where you see from red to purple. Red is the slowest, and then it goes up the rainbow to purple.
And then there's amplitude, because at any point on that spectrum, if it's turned up loud enough, your head could explode, I think.
Yeah. But then also with light, anything above purple is ultraviolet. Anything below red is infrared. And then if you keep going, you're in radio station land.
I think being involved in production, you're constantly reading scope, range, and things like that with applying effects, trying to get levels right and all that. And I find that in part with DXers, they kind of are running like a little production in a way, like in trying to write about, like they're trying to find and capture these sounds, put them to a website, clean them up a bit, and then there's like some other larger theory about why they think they're...
You're just trying to find patterns in the madness.
And it's really interesting because to me, because you have these camps of people who are interested in noise, but it really changes in terms of attitude. And you have like the noise scene with like hipsters, and they're into maybe just harsh noise, or they think of noise as like this, like a post-punk thing or something. And then there's people who think of noise in terms of a vast range and not so specific to being loud or like a wall of noise. And then you have DXers who are just interested in listening, but they know nothing of these scenes or of like Merzbow or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So they're interesting to me in that way too, because I hope I'm not assuming anything, but like when I see these guys on YouTube, they're playing back these samples that sounds like the latest Merzbow record.
Yeah.
But to them, they're listening to it, but not enjoying it for the same reason as someone who's listening to, you know what I mean? It's like, it's an interesting thing.
I'd never heard of it until now.
Yeah.
What's your favorite noise? Brown, pink, or white?
White.
White? Okay.
White noise, yeah.
Yeah.
I find when crafting white...
Partial to white.
Yeah. White noise, for some reason, I don't know why, but it's a little crisper, easier to shape. You have more like room to shape it down.
Right.
But pink
There's
noise
probably a reason for that.
sounds like combined noise.
Pink noise crops at 20 hertz and 20K.
Okay.
White noise, you're getting the scope beyond human hearing.
Yeah. White noise. I love white noise. Yeah. Brown noise on the other is like it's of the lower.
Brown noise is calculated through an algorithm.
What's the purpose of brown noise? Or
I forget. It was invented by Dr. Brown. No, it was invented. It was like
call it brown noise. Dr. Pink.
Yeah.
Was it? I wonder if it was used initially to test equipment or speakers or
Could
things
be.
like that. Yeah.
I don't know.
Who's your favorite guitarist?
I would have said Larry Carlton for a long time. But, man. Oh, Bert Jansch. Bert Jansch, Larry Carlton. There's got to be more.
Least favorite?
Least favorite guitar
Neil Young.
player.
No, soloist, guitarist.
John Mayer.
John Mayer, yeah. That's a good. But have you heard Neil Young solo? I love Neil Young, by the way. I love his music. But when he solos, it's like dang, 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 dang.
Yeah. He's not interested in the technical side. I feel like. Really.
Yeah,
But he likes the noise. I feel like he just wants to let it rip.
Let it rip. Yeah. What's your favorite Neil Young album? Mine would be Tonight's the Night.
Really?
Yeah.
On the Beach.
On the Beach is my second favorite. Yeah, that one's great. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's underrated.
As of late, most people are saying On the Beach.
Really?
Yeah, it's become Pitchfork and Stereo Gum. All these sites are champion that album now. So you get
maybe I'm onto something. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's a great album. Neil Young says that he was really depressed when he wrote it, and so he doesn't really
comes through. Yeah.
He doesn't like it as much but which I don't get. He sounds depressed on most.
Yeah, I think maybe the depression approach made it seem that much more effortless. Because he's like, I just don't care.
I love Zuma too. Great album. Well, he's a popular schmuck. He doesn't need any more praise.
Yeah, I saw him play a month or two ago in April. I saw him play.
I remember when Bob Dylan won the award, some literary award.
I don't know.
Remember recently, and then everybody was like, "Oh, Joni Mitchell should have won that," and then
maybe he won the Pulitzer or the what's the
Pulitzer?
Other one? Is that what it is?
I think yeah.
Could be.
Anyway, yeah, people seem shocked by that.
Have you heard Bert Jansch? You know Bert Jansch, no? Yeah.
Bert Jansch.
Bert Jansch with a J.
Do you know Don Cherry?
No.
Jazz musician.
Is he one of your faves?
Yeah, he's a new favorite. Someone I discovered about like 2 years ago as I was looking for this Sun Ra record. And he's amazing. He's one of the early jazz composers, I would say, in the 70s. One of the first of the few to really maximize the production of jazz rather than it sounding like contained to a room or something. And taking that to another level and created some wonderful, wonderful soundscapes. And it's also really bizarre, wonky, off-kilter kind of music, but then falls into place. So it like constantly is throwing you for a loop and then giving you a wonderful surprise. And he's great.
What's his instrument?
He plays saxophone, several other instruments, I think. Trumpet, I think.
What years? Like late 60s or
50s maybe, and then on through to the 80s, I think. I don't know if he was releasing stuff into the 90s. Yeah. Also got into not a jazz group, but the Cleaners from Venus. Have you heard of them?
No.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the music sounds the same, but I would check his stuff out. He was kind of too weird for his time, I think. but was around when post-punk was really trying to define itself. And for whatever reason, it was even too weird for that scene. But really, the Cleaners from Venus, but really, really good songwriting, melodic and funny themes. He's great. Discovered that recently. And I've been revisiting Penguin Cafe Orchestra, and what a wonderful group. I kind of wrote them off for a while because they were making all these car commercials, but I really like their sound.
I don't know who that is.
Are you into what's called outsider music?
A little bit.
Have you heard of the Songs in the Key of Z compilation?
Yeah, I heard of that. I never really
Or American Songpoem.
latched onto it in a way that I do other things.
Yeah, it's not like music that gives you, it gives me the chills. I find it to be impressive even if the musician is lacking in skill.
Like Wesley Willis. That's someone I keep coming back
Rock
to who's
and
considered
roll
outsider.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
I mean, that's like entry-level outsider music.
Yeah. Or Dan, the most popular of them all.
Daniel Johnston.
Daniel Johnston.
Yeah,
I own several of his albums. I feel so stupid. And including one that he did with Jad Fair, who I met at this. It was a book release party through Penny Ante, and we're both featured in the same book of artists and whatnot. And each section of the book was dedicated to a different artist. And I grabbed the book and I went outside and I started flipping through it. And Jad Fair came out and he was like, "Why are you so excited?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I'm young, I'm stupid." That's all I said to him. But he played later and I was so impressed. Great, wonderful. He was in half Japanese. He played with Daniel Johnston.
Okay.
I think on drums. He was on drums. But and he makes art. That's really cool.
Not to get too psychoanalytical, but part of me is afraid to identify with outsider music because it's scared. Like it's like, well, this is a terrible comparison. I was going to say it's like watching a snuff film. It's like, I'm scared. I think.
There's something to be said about that. And I think that's a healthy reaction. And I think why is because it's easy to romanticize it and to recreate it not from the same place of suffering as they may have been while making it. And who's to say that they were suffering while making the music? But I think it's silly for listeners to assume these people are just kind of like slap happy, whipping this stuff up and might be a little eccentric. I mean, a lot of this stuff is written by people who have undergone like serious trauma, and that is evident in the music and what you hear. I guess why I like it though is because it's like the other end of the spectrum in terms of what qualifies as a song or as, so it's like in the song spectrum. Now, the other end of the spectrum, the other end would be like conceptual music, John Cage and all that, you know what I mean? But then there's like the spectrum of proper songwriting versus improper, So that's what I'm referring to. But there is on the compilations, there are a few artists who you can tell are highly intelligent. So it's not to do with intelligence. It's more like they just don't have the right equipment or whatever, or they don't have the right skill set. So it's not always so haunting. Or like they're suffering or like, But it just is like a funny result sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're not all that aware of it and they're trying to put it out, or they are.
I always thought Jandek was cool.
I like Jandek. And people will say a lot of his stuff sounds the same.
Yeah.
But I do notice little differences, subtle differences that are interesting. Someone whose music strikes me as odd, because it's not really outsider or insider or whatever. And I know it's been an exhausting discussion as far as like what constitutes outsider art, what is outsider. I mean, we've been having this discussion for a long time, but without going into that, I think there is a general understanding of what it is. Anyways, Arthur Russell's interesting because he's not... Do you know Arthur Russell?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's interesting because he is outside and inside. Like, wasn't he academically trained? He was...
On the cello, right?
Yeah. But then he made this otherworldly music that's not really appealing to everybody. Like, it sounds... What am I trying to say?
I don't know, that he somehow had this academic trained grasp of an instrument, but then also could take it to this other place, maybe?
He also seemed unhinged in a way that most academic musicians don't really, you don't get to hear in their music because they're so invested in doing it right.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's a kind of serenity in his music. I think that's exciting when you get that in music, because it's kind of like the artist who trains, who does a lot of, who gets really invested in like draftsmanship or perspective, and then they reject it all and make something amazing out of that rejection. And so there's that kind of musician too that I find interesting.
Yeah, it's like too pedantic.
Yeah, but I'll say I find even certain outsider artists like Adolf Wolfley, I think is how you say his name.
I don't know that one.
Really disturbing, but brilliant, beautiful to look at. But when you hear the backstory, it's really sad and disturbing. And I think that should change our perception of the work. So it goes back to, I think you're starting to say, which is like, how do you engage that if it's not all that, if it's disturbing, or do you at all?
Yeah, I mean, it feels, do you really want to go there? It's like, and there's like an exploitative part to it. And I guess I just feel bad if someone's taking the brunt of the joke instead of controlling it, you know?
But what if there's an appreciation for those musicians not being at the butt of some joke, but just by people who realize that, you know, it's still a sort of spirit of art making, like people are still invested in this thing, and to put it out there is like answering to their call in a way. And that's how I see the compilations, like Songs in the Key of Z. But
I mean, making records was probably the best thing that ever happened to Daniel Johnston. So you know, it's like we're participating in his reconciliation with whatever he had going on.
And it's an interesting subject for me because, like, art and madness, you know, that's a common thing that's discussed, and there's all sorts of cliches about what the line between being creative and mad and whatnot. But so many artists who are mentally ill never get representation or just ripped off, namely the surrealist, you know, going around to asylums and like looking at people's work and just picking it up, not really giving them a platform but themselves. So I think when listening to stuff made by maybe people who are mentally ill or just extremely eccentric in an uncomfortable way, in a way you're honoring.
That's more positive than my cynical spin. Right.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not trying to argue. You have every right to I was just I love outsider. I don't want to call it outsider, but what's been called outsider music. I really appreciate the compilations and Songs in the Key of Z. American Song Poem is good too.
What are you listening to now? I'm a hard sell on new music. I'm the worst. And if I do like some contemporary artist, no matter who they are, it's like, it takes me a long. Like I said before, I'm late. I'm always late.
Contemporary.
When you listen to music casually, what do you listen to? Or do you even?
Yeah, all the time. Cleaners from Venus right now, as I said before, and then, but like new contemporary music. When you say contemporary, I'm thinking 70s onward. Oh. Because there's something still informative about 70s experimental music.
But I just mean like something that hit the album release cycle in the last 6 months or a year.
I'm trying to think. That's a great question, actually. I like the new Royal Trux record. I think you remember him. Barrett Avner did a little lick on there.
Yeah.
I really liked the album. Barrett's an amazing guitar player, like yourself. You guys are both amazing guitar players.
I always like Barrett a lot.
Me too. I like Barrett because he's honest. No matter what, you know. So I appreciate that about him.
We're never really close or anything. I just always thought he was hilarious.
Yeah, me too. He's a very smart individual. Yeah. But so he posted something and I listened to the album. I really liked that. And then Steve Reich, I'm always kind of interested in what he's putting out. I've been listening to a lot of they keep putting out Bowie albums, live albums that have never been released. I've been enjoying that tremendously. Rest in peace. I miss David Bowie.
What was the Red Bull thing you did?
That was in 2016, 2015. Interview with Mark McNeil. He had a show called Landscape. on Red Bull Radio, which was featuring artists in Los Angeles and talking about their work and in the context of being like in Los Angeles and stuff like that. It was nice. Yeah, good interview. That was my first real interview, I guess.
Was it just a bunch of Los Angeles artists? Like, was there a theme?
Yeah,
Or was it just
artists from LA who he feels have in some way shaped an aspect of LA musically or whatever, or has contributed in some way, and so he talks about their work in that context. I think that's what happened, or what we were saying anyway. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
At first I was like, oh, you want to talk to me? I just I stay at home all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, you like me, you don't play shows.
Yeah, I don't play shows, but but people tell me, you know, when they do visit, that there are people listening and talking about various albums like Dawn Adults and stuff like that. And so it's weird. And I've been thinking it would be nice, to perform and meet people, stuff like that. But, so it's kind of weird to hear about that stuff, you know.
I mean, you put stuff out with labels and things with other artists.
Generally, I don't seek out releasing an album on a label. And anytime I have with Doppelganger Records or Low Recordings, which just was a single, they approached me. And it's great what I put out through them, but they wanted control over the production, you know, how it sounded in the end. So that kind of confused me a bit. And so I just released through Bandcamp. And the next album I'm working on has to do with, I'd like to do something with all these frequencies I'm recording through DXing and all that. Maybe just clean those up a bit. Really something really dry and boring. And just
Yeah.
I've been giving so much of my time to making songs that now I just want to present sounds that come from the universe or something.
Yeah.
Not from me. Gonna release an album soon called 100 Hits of Acid. And it's basically music I made in a studio on a lot of acid. As boring as that's all it is. But the music came out surprisingly not that sloppy, and it's really clear. And I was kind of taken aback when I heard it. I was like, wow, this sounds like a bunch of people fighting and getting through all these layers and still using the drug somehow, but able to function. So I like it. Gonna put it out. It's really funny. It's more of a comedy record.
Yeah.
There's a lot of singing about feces and stuff, you know. And also the Marquis de Sade, the guy who wrote. Mm-hmm. So anyways, yeah, it's offensive, it's fun, it's lavish, but it's also...
What does the Marquis de Sade have to do with it? Just as part of the singing?
Yeah, we're singing about stuff like that. My friend Aaron Spafford and I. But these are older recordings. So basically what happened is I recorded all this music. It all ended up on a hard drive. Didn't have access to it until 2 years ago. Aaron sent me this hard drive. I didn't even know it existed. And so now I'm going back through all these old recordings and releasing albums out of it that I find are interesting. And most of it's more in line of comedy. I think that's because we're in an academic setting and wanted to turn all this finer and more serious points on the head.
Right.
You know, just be subversive or something. But so strangely, it is academic music, a lot of it, but in a way, because we made it in an academic setting. But
right.
I want to form a band.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't done that yet.
Well, I do too.
Yeah.
Let's form a band.
Let's form a band.
Robbie on keys.
I always get too many maestros in the band.
That can be an asset, right?
But usually there's one guy screaming at everybody, and it always ends up being that. I don't know how.
Right.
But if I play just one-on-one with someone, that works well. But anytime it's 4 people, something gets weird. Maybe I'm too passive and not saying enough, or I never give commands
I think
musically.
about that scene in Purple Rain where Prince is just, he won't let the keyboard player he won't play her songs because he's a megalomaniac.
Oh shit!
You know what I mean?
I gotta rewatch that scene.
I hate that. It's always cooler if you want band members to get along, but you want to feel like you're part of this club. That's why I don't really care. I don't really like Prince that much. I never liked his records. I don't like what he stands for. And I feel
don't
like
know what he
he's kind
stands
of,
for. I love Prince, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I just
what
mean as far as I see a guy with like a Napoleonic complex who's like, so
a little bit. Totally. Yeah.
but it's as far
a lot
as
of
like,
his songs sound the same too, but I don't want to rip on it.
Right.
Too much on the.
But I just don't think it's fun. There's something controlling and contrived about it. You'd probably be a nightmare to know personally, or to be in his band. Whereas, like, I don't know, people who you really respect as musicians, like, man, that guy's a great bass player. There's like a mutual respect, like the E Street Band, or.
What do you think of John Frusciante?
I don't know.
Just that's a random question. He released that album in, what was it, 94, where he was totally emaciated from drug use. And the music is powerful in that it's kind of a window into the hysteria that comes with like intense drug use. It's on the verge of outsider, but it's also insider. I mean, he was in the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
And he had this record, what is it called? Well, he's dressed up on the front and he's got like a lipstick on.
I had a copy of To Record Water for 7 days or whatever it's called.
He's an interesting figure, but in terms of music, the theater of tragedy and all that, not to say he was
as far as that, when I think of John Frusciante, I think of like kind of 90s, just things
and
that are
he's
a little
success
left.
story, by the way, I should say. Yeah, not a failure.
I just think of kind of like fun 90s, a little left to the dial music. Like I would picture John Frusciante and like Stereo Lab in a 90s skate video and be like, this is cool. Yeah.
What music are you into? Have you stated before you haven't really found anything, right? That's contemporary that you like. But I wonder if I'm just a curmudgeon now. I wonder if it's just, if I'm not investigating enough, or there's just too much. Yeah.
I've been kind of bored. Lots of Beatles, but it's more like Beatles studies. Like I'm cerebrally listening to the Beatles.
Let's talk about the Beatles for 2 seconds.
I checked out the new Lil B mixtape, and I checked out the new Mickey Avalon single. And then last night I was listening to Calm Truth just because there's no words and it helps me relax.
Oh, nice.
It takes my mind off words.
The Beatles, what interests me most, or at least right now, about their legacy is what each individual member actually stood for and how that's kind of put to the test their larger message as a band. And that seems like kind of a silly thing to be invested in, but so often it's like people are like, what would John Lennon do?
Yeah.
People don't know John Lennon was also a fucking wife abuser, like, piece of shit guy.
Yeah.
And but I also feel I'm slandering a dead person that I didn't really know, so, but still it's like,
I don't know. I mean, he's just, yeah.
But he also, he admits it and sings about it in his songs about hitting women. I used to beat the women, whatever that song, like he sings about it. But it's knowing that, but so anyways, what's interesting about...
A jealous guy?
I don't know which song, but what's interesting about the Beatles mythology is each member is kind of regarded, like we've gotten past the stage of saying, George was the shy one and so forth. Like they've kind of outgrew that. But where people aren't yet, with realizing each member's involvement is, I feel, and truly understanding Paul McCartney's involvement. I almost said the artist, not that guy. Paul McCartney's involvement and how he was the one experimenting. He was the one taking the music to another level, but because of the political climate at the time and this image of like rebellion and whatnot, John Lennon was latched onto for being progressive, and then it was just handed to him as far as being the experimental leader of the group. And I don't, that just isn't true.
Yeah.
It's not true.
I think in one aspect, they're all kind of along for Paul's ride.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. Paul, I feel like he's got that bit of Prince in him where he's like, we're going to do this thing. Like, I need to do this. And
But
it's kind of maybe a control freak. And
like, you could say that about him, and that could contribute to the myth of Paul. Like, we'll never truly get to the heart of it without knowing him behind the camera or something, I guess. I don't know. But my understanding is, like, of all the Beatles and their message being constantly about, like, all you need is love, like, Paul McCartney was the only one in the band really demonstrating that, looking after John Lennon's kids. Basically, his level of compassion kind of takes a little bit away from this image that we have of him as being, like, totally self-involved or, like, pretentious or just, I don't know. But I love the Beatles, but then I love them also for the message. It's just doesn't really still stand because we've become, as a society, really interested in how musicians or the people we idolize fuck up. And that's really starting to bring into question of, oh, should we like their music still? Can we still like it? Or whatever it is they're doing, even though they're a fucked up person.
Right, yeah. People like to defame. And there's definitely a lot of that in the air now.
Yeah. But there's things about the Beatles, you cannot deny, as far as the social movement and what they did for the world. That is extremely positive.
Yeah, like, we talked about this. I'm holding back a little bit because I talked about this on the last episode.
Oh, shit.
A little bit. Yeah. About, like, how they changed, like, Western music. And part of me just kind of is just wary of like, people from that generation, just because, like, we were all kind of raised by baby boomers who just thought they were the greatest thing.
And a lot of hypocrisy in the 60s, especially with, like, and I don't know how this will sit with anyone, but, like, especially with how men treated women in the 60s who are supposedly radical free thinkers, like, so much hypocrisy. Each generation likes to tell itself what it had, and then later it kind of distorts. And then people are like, did we really have that? Were we really of this quality? Were we, you know, but I don't see my parents doing that.
No?
Or I don't know. Baby boomers seem like they're still kind of like.
For me, like, baby boomers, they just think they're hot shit.
Yeah, their generation.
They're kind of narcissistic, and they were like the biggest. They did it bigger and better than anybody. That's like how people always change the number of people who went to Woodstock. Mm-hmm. Some places it's 100,000. Some places it's 500,000.
Yeah.
Well, which is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we were that big. Well, maybe we weren't.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, that too. I remember as a kid someone telling me, oh my God, all these people were lacerating their feet, stepping on glass. It was a nightmare. So I always thought of Woodstock as like this disaster zone where all these people were getting hurt and stuff, you know. And then but anyway, my favorite moment from Woodstock, highlight for me, Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner. And I get tears in my eyes to this day when I see it, because I realize something different about the solo every time, what he's depicting musically. And recently I heard the cries. He did this, a sound of a missile, like it goes, and then he makes like this, like the sound of people crying. I didn't realize that for the longest time until someone broke it down.
I didn't hear the cries. I thought it was always just missiles dropping.
Or they're screams. It's supposed to be screams.
Well, he was in the army, so you have to predicate that with the fact that he was in the army. And the black people's, like, in the 60s, it was bad, you know?
Things were starting to happen, but there was still, like, these crazy knee-jerk reactions back. Still is to this day, I would say, in some ways. But, like, in the 60s, yeah, you're right. It took a while for people to catch on.
The Civil Rights Act.
But Jimi Hendrix, he took what became a joke to 70s rock groups and other, like, this kind of like hippy-dippy noodling, and gave it this kind of fierceness, and through sound depicted a story that was kind of horrifying, or, you know, or something to do with war. At the right moment, at the right, I mean, it's really the most powerful thing I think I've ever seen. It's like,
what a lot of people don't know about that is that was on a Monday morning around 11 a.m.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the festival was Friday night, and then they slept, and then Saturday early morning, like sunrise.
Wow.
And then all through the night, music, like 24 hours of music. And then Sunday, 24 hours of music. And then they're like, well, let's just keep bringing people in. So 24 hours, like all night they're playing. And then Jimi Hendrix was the last one to play at 11 a.m. on a Monday.
Wow.
In the morning. So like people were walking out at the end of almost 4 days when he took the stage. And
were they unfazed by what was happening because they're eager to get off the premise or whatever? You know, like.
Yeah, I think they were. Yeah.
So they
were
probably didn't really understand what was
sleeping
happening. Yeah.
For a stretch of days. So yeah.
Had it not been recorded, I wonder if it would have been like lesser memorable moments of Woodstock, or I don't know. But it's
right.
That recording stands as like the most important piece from.
They tacked him on at the end of the end of Woodstock.
And infamously, Grateful Dead did terrible during Woodstock.
Yeah, and then Santana killed it too. That made his career.
Santana killed it. Yes.
Yeah,
he did really. What other bands killed it?
Joe Cocker.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he did. Jefferson Airplane, I believe, bombed.
There's a lot. I used to watch, because I used to have the Blu-ray. But for me, Monterey Pop was always the Hendrix show, because that was his first thing that he did after he came back from England, was Monterey Pop. And that solidified him as like whatever cultural sensation was the Monterey Pop in '68.
Which is it the Rainbow Festival where he's up on this giant stage?
Rainbow Bridge. Is that what you're talking about?
The Rainbow Bridge.
Rainbow Bridge is the one in Hawaii. That was his last show.
So it's a recording of a show. And have you seen the video of it?
Of Rainbow Bridge? Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one where he's on this giant stage. Everyone's like way below.
Yeah. It's really windy.
And he's playing with Buddy Miles, I think.
Rainbow Bridge, he just has the three-piece.
Yeah, it was shortly after he did Band of Gypsies, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love. That's my favorite Jimi Hendrix record.
Where he's playing the Flying V.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That was at the very end.
Yeah.
Rainbow Bridge is funny, too, because it's the last footage of him before he died. And there's one part of it where I've never said this on the show before. And whenever I say it, I sound a little conspiracy theory-y.
Yeah.
And I do kind of feel like Mike Jeffries killed him. But this is going to sound a little...
No, this is exciting.
Yeah, okay, so there's a part in the Rainbow Bridge, which is the last footage of him, like I think 2 or 3 months before he died. There's all these, all this B-roll of like these hippies hanging out backstage. They're all just talking just hippie, rambling nonsense. And like, he just starts going off on like one of these crazy like acid stories. Just kind of to impress the camera and just put all the other dudes that are there like kind of in their place because he's Jimi Hendrix. And he starts telling this weird fantasy story about how he's, I don't know, it just sounds like he's describing a dream. And he's like, I'm flying over the pyramids of Egypt and all of a sudden Cleopatra comes and I shoot into the clouds and I go a million miles into the clouds. And then we're in the clouds with Cleopatra and there's men knocking on the door saying, curb service. And then Cleopatra starts feeding me grapes and I'm choking on the grapes. And he's telling just this crazy story that makes no sense. So then 3 months later, he's in the apartment, his girlfriend leaves, and then he's found with over a gallon of wine and sleeping pills in his stomach. So he had said on camera that like this weird
premonition.
Yeah, this weird kind of premonition. And it always bugged me. I've never heard anyone else mention this. But can you do enough acid to where you see your own death? And is that what happened?
Oof. I think you can do enough acid to where you're convinced you've died. But I don't know if you can foresee your death. I don't know. That's a great question. But
choking on grapes and then dying by choking on wine 3 months later.
It's an odd parallel. Yeah, right. It's creepy. Yeah. But maybe, so you think that guy killed him?
I think his manager
was trying for a while, maybe when he was in a overly sedated state, maybe, or like.
If he was murdered, that Mike Jeffries probably hired some people to go over to the apartment and maybe threatened his girlfriend to leave, get out of there, because there's all these weird inconsistencies with her story about why she had left for those hours in that night and who she was with. And if he was murdered, I feel like Mike Jeffries probably hired like some goons just to basically go attack Jimi Hendrix and like force wine and sleeping pills down his throat over money.
Damn.
You know, in another country. So, because he was worth more to the people that were managing him dead than alive.
Really? Interesting. Yeah.
There wasn't really any respect. I mean, they're not trying to make a black guy in the late 60s become, you know, a legacy artist like the Rolling Stones. It's not that type of deal. I mean, the way Elvis was treated, even before that, as a white guy was beyond questionable.
Subject of Elvis. It's an interesting rabbit hole to fun rabbit hole to jump down to, yeah.
Yeah.
When I think of Jimmy, I think of a kind, approachable dude who also is a little like maybe dodgy and wanting to get to the studio, kind of like touch and go kind of character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also kind of troubled in that I think he felt
issues
like
with his mom, big time issues.
Oh, really? Yeah.
His mom died young, and if you listen to Little Wing, you could frame that on a song about his dead mom.
Wow.
Easily.
I think his legacy it's really like to do with one thing. It's almost one-dimensional. It's like someone who is a black virtuoso guitarist, sort of defying stereotypes. I think to a lot of people and other white people, hippies and whatnot, that there was something of value there, especially who are a part of like the civil rights. But to what extent that had to do with his career or anything, or how uncomfortable he was, or naturally put in that position because he was black, I don't know. Like, and in fact, it would be nice to hear some like interviews with him talking about being a black man on there. I haven't seen anything like that, but have you? No.
Not really.
So it's hard to talk about or like really know with Jimmy because on the back of Electric Lady or whichever one, he's got two white ladies on either shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems like he was one of...
There's a sex tape too.
Oh, cool.
Jimi Hendrix sex tape.
Oh, amazing. I'd love to see that. He's porking a white lady.
A couple, yeah, I think, and a black one.
Go Jimmy.
I don't know if that might be fake.
It's really like...
No, but there's one that's
Professor
really
Don
realistic.
Lewis. What?
There's one that might be real. I forget.
You never know.
It's like the Marilyn Monroe one. It was definitely, it was a taboo, I think, to be talking about civil rights. Like,
I wonder if he...
On Dick Cavett. Like, he's going to go on Dick Cavett and say, hey...
He would have isolated himself amongst other white people who were interested in his music, maybe? Had he talked about that? Like, was he aware of that? Or would that have happened? Or was it really inclusive of him as were we as a culture like, wow, basically loving a black guitarist? you know?
Yeah.
Was it that? And I think, yeah. And then with that, there's all these problematic things that people need to be informed of in terms of like not having stereotypes. You can still have stereotypes about someone and really respect them,
I think musically, or like the kids that bought his records or whatever, they were not preoccupied by the fact that he was black.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think there's enough there with his like relationship with the guitar and like the fact that he's playing it upside down, left-handed.
Yeah.
The whole package is there. And he was definitely, he knew that. Like he's like a showman, I feel like, with flicking his tongue and shit and like.
Amazing.
He knew.
Gives me the chills, man. That shit gives me the chills. I get goosebumps listening to Hendrix. Not Clapton.
Oh, I still don't understand Clapton. I think I even Googled recently, how did Clapton make so much money?
Singing, that's a terrible joke. I shouldn't say. Would you know my name?
Right. No,
if I saw you. Oh, God. That's a sad story, but everybody was like, oh, Eric Clapton after that song. And then suddenly he's one of the great guitarists of all time. Or was he always celebrated as that? Take me to an Eric Clapton solo where I'm going to get the chills. Like, I can't find one.
Yeah.
Maybe what he did with Cream. Is there a shining moment?
I think somebody wrote, Clapton is God on the tube walls of the subway in England in 1961 or whatever.
Some important exec was on acid and like, oh yes. But yeah, he's a racist.
Racist.
Eric Clapton, yeah. Infamous, I should say, has an infamous side for racial slurs on stage, making racial slurs, yeah.
You know, I went to his rehab. He owns a rehab in Antigua, which is a pretty colonized, black place. But I think he owns that to get a big tax break because he owns a lot of property and like a mansion and a yacht that he parks there too.
Oh, shit.
And then in the Caribbean, alcoholism is a big problem. And so I think that he opened Crossroads to get, like a tax break with the Antigua Barbuda government.
Shit.
But I never saw him. But at the rehab when I was there, which was a whole nother story, terrible overall experience. They had like Clapton's signature guitar, and then we like go on hikes and you could see his mansion and his yacht.
Interesting. Yeah, he doesn't deserve his riches. Or I don't know who deserves what.
I went to the Experience Hendrix Museum in Seattle. That definitely influenced my Hendrix understanding.
All right, here's the last taboo subject. Has the white man stolen music from black people, from people of color? Is that still an upstanding argument, or do people even need to be invested, like occupied? Do we even need to care anymore, or like, is there still more representation to be found? And like, just recently, Detroit, I've known forever, but now more people are finding out that techno originated in Detroit, amongst like black. A lot of people didn't know that. So there's always information coming out about the roots, and it always comes back to like, black people, and that's wonderful.
Yeah,
but what is there to be
from Elvis onward, probably before that, people appropriating. I don't think you should ask that question because you're already treading into the wrong territory just by asking it.
Yeah.
If you're really blind to it, then just be blind to it, and don't worry about it. Because then you won't get caught up in it. But I mean, from Elvis to Eminem to everybody, right?
There's this new guy that just came out. He's got like these little. He came out with this rap song, and I agree with you as far as the question being too loaded in a complicated way. Like I feel the same way.
I
bring it up though because it's
Chuck Berry was pissed, right? He died pissed because everyone
Miles
ripped
Davis
him
too.
off. Yeah.
Miles Davis famously said, "White musicians are always a note behind," which I find that funny. I think it's true. Like when it comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. It originated in Detroit techno amongst people who are noticing that factories were getting shut down, and so they're making this kind of activist music about that and living in the city, and it had like this kind of cool militant feel. So I learned these things, but like, how do we then not make it about that? Or again, why even ask that? It's a weird territory.
There's this one documentary on I'm gonna fuck this up. But whatever country in Africa sued Disney because of The Lion King.
Oh yeah, that's a total ripoff of another film, animation that was made in Africa.
No, the song.
Oh, the song.
Awimawe. It was all about Awimawe. They couldn't leverage their lawsuit against Disney at all because it was just these two African lawyers working with the survivors of the guy who wrote Awimawe. They found a way they filed some kind of injunction in Africa that banned any Disney imagery in Africa because that was the only thing they could do was take Disney out of the country as leverage. And they ended up winning, but
wow.
But Disney paid the family. It's a really interesting documentary.
How much did they get? That's all I know.
They won't say. They won't say. But
Show
what
me
happened
the money.
is that the family who's like poor and addicted to drugs, and like one of them, like I think has AIDS. They didn't end up seeing any of the money. Like the lawyers and the country.
It's terrible.
Everybody like pilfered from them, just like what happened with the song to begin with.
It's terrible. Yeah. Okay, no more of this black-white bullshit. But where do you think? It's not bullshit.
I think we're exhausting it. My brain juice is
gone. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, we can wrap it up. Yeah. What's your Bandcamp?
Oh, Bandcamp is vitaminwigc@bandcamp.com.
What do you want that you could use an audience that is listening to get?
Wait.
That was phrased. That was like a salad of
words.
What would you like to accomplish that you could say to help you get what you want?
Out of the music?
Not even through the music, but through like this moment on this show.
Oh. Eat your vegetables.
There you go.
Well, I think, no, it's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer it, but it's...
Let's think about that too, because people are listening and it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Support the show and have more, better conversations with people and get the fuck off your phone.
Yeah. I would say, okay, I get where this is going now. I would say, stop waiting around. I would say, plant a tree. Seriously. I mean, like, okay. And whatever happened to Jamba Juice, and are they still around? Yeah.
They must be.
Now I'm asking the audience a question. I don't think I'll ever get that answer. Don't stick Q-tips too far in your ear. Women never like it when you pass a gas, no matter how much they react and say it's funny and great.
That's practical. So maybe you should eat more vegetables, but also
put a
pork in it.
Or a butt plug, whatever.
You got more?
I got one more. It's really easy to get caught up in I think we're done.
All right. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
All right. Thanks for doing this, Robbie.
You're welcome.
I hope you had a good
Thank
time. I always wonder, I hope I don't exhaust people by like
No.
trapping them in a dentist chair for 2 hours.
No, it's perfect. Thank you very much for having
Thank
me
you.
on the show.
All right,
This was
man.
great.
You've been listening to the 90th most popular show ever made. Thanks to Robbie. Check out the Patreon. Check out the website. If you want to run an ad on the show, email me. And as always, thanks for listening.